Hello, I am your teacher, Sharella. In Converging Divinely in Marriage, Treating Differently What You Want to Last Forever, we'll talk about a nymph, an ogre, and a pair of phoenix birds. We'll discuss how love is like a flower, a tower, a bubble, a tech device, a fighting match, and a lawn of grass, as well as the 4 must-haves in marriage. We'll talk of Thanatos passion, of primitives and ambassadors, the 30-day husband challenge, of the ultimate reign of the king and queen with God in the mix, and all along the way, date and dessert ideas to keep things hot with your honey. I'm not a licensed expert on the topic of marriage, but I do feel compelled to study and share my findings from the experts about how to make a marriage work. Makes my job easy and rewarding. I have the delightful opportunity and mission of summarizing takeaways of the experts' findings and experience and merging them together into an enjoyable course on how to love your honey more, and add almost 30 years of my own marriage experience. This course, Converging Divinely in Marriage, is part of the 12-course Love Zone Marriage, which you can find here as well. Oh, and get excited for my favorite cookie recipe for you to share together after some great massages.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a young girl and a young boy who fell madly in love with each other. When we grow up, let's get married and live together forever. One day, as they walked hand in hand alongside a babbling brook, they ran upon a shiny golden object nestled in a bush. The young man exclaimed, "Look, it appears someone has lost their royal crown." The young girl examined the crown and stated, "Perhaps so, but all the jewels are missing." Indeed, 10 gem-shaped indentations marked the perimeter of the crown, making it appear shoddy and deficient without the potentially stunning stones. She suggested, "Shall we ask about the village as to who the owner might be?" "Oh no," the boy countered. "People would immediately claim it, of course." Suddenly, a nymph appeared ahead of them on the path, telling the girl, "This is your crown. You have only to find the 10 missing stones, and you will have your forever union to your true love." The girl giggled, but was up for the challenge. "Where are we to find the stones?" she asked the nymph. The nymph slowly faded into oblivion with these words in its wake. "Your treasure is in your knowing. If you want something to last forever, you treat it differently." The two gazed into each other's eyes as they embarked on a most incredible journey. So imagine their surprise when the girl and the lad ran upon a unicorn, standing bright and serene amid the forest canopy. Their surprise increased further as it spoke to them. "You treat differently what you want to last forever. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." The unicorn opened its mouth, and there lay a turquoise gem. And this turquoise gem the girl fitted into the crown, and then there is...
Gem number 1. You treat differently what you want to last forever. I attended a week-long marriage workshop where one of the presenters is a divorce attorney named Tamara Fackrell. In addition to her law degree, Fackrell also has a PhD in marriage and family therapy. In other words, she helps couples uncouple, then teaches her students how to stay married. What a fabulous combination for discovering what doesn't work and cementing what does work in marriage. Oh, and Tamara Fackrell has another thing I love going for her. She is seriously the character of Reese Witherspoon of the Legally Blonde movies, airheady and keenly smart. So I had to laugh when, at one of her presentations, she admonished us in her Barbie doll voice to treat our spouse like we treat our tech device, our phones and such that we carry everywhere with us. Here are her points, some of them tongue-in-cheek, and some overbearing, but you'll get the picture of treating your spouse like your tech device. Touch them a lot. Share your calendar and location. Give them a majority of your attention. Be lost when they aren't around. Stare at them constantly. Let their needs interrupt other tasks. Trust them with your confidential information. Do a quick reset when needed. Take them where you go. Recharge often. I also had to laugh at her advice, along the tech idea again, to use the marriage remote control to improve your relationship. We have the button play. Keep moving. Don't let things get stuck and unresolved. Stop. Determine what you do not need in your marriage. Fast forward. How will things look in the future if done well? Rewind. Take care of the past. Apologize. Forgive. If we could go back in time, how would we do things differently in the future? And what have we learned from the past? Pause. Take a break when needed. Come back when ready. Record. Remember what works. Things you love. Take a moment in your exchanges in marriage and debate where you are on the marriage remote and what button you might use and when. You feel hostility coming on. Will you stop, pause, take a break if needed, or rewind, apologize, forgive, deal with the past? You're feeling loving and connecting. Will you play, keep things moving and not stuck, fast forward, determine how things will look in the future if done well, and record. Remember what works, what you love. One of my mentors says the most important part of keeping a strong marriage together is to focus on what you want, not on what you don't want. And for heaven's sake, don't hand your personal remote control over to your spouse so they can manage your emotions for you. Each of you controls your own remote to stay in your own power. When done well, Fackrell condenses the marriage remote to 4 parts of love: fall in love, nurture in love, savor in love, and remember in love. So here are Tamra's tips for love, respect, and communication. Do an unwanted chore for your spouse. Respect your time. Keep promises. Keep confidences. Fight fair. Catch them doing it right. Take risks. Honor them in front of your kids. Put your phones away. Take care of yourself. Create a date plan. Wake up to a dreamy snuggle. Give specific feedback on how best to love you. Make soup when they're sick. Wink at them. Do a shoulder-to-shoulder activity with little talking. Do a house project extra well. Look into their eyes when they're talking. Express love creatively. Brag about them to others. Create a love board for love letters. You do these extra things because you treat things differently that you want to last forever. You probably won't have your device forever, but I'm guessing technology will provide us with something we definitely don't want to be without because it increases our level of satisfaction, just like can be had in marriage. When you restore something, you use quality materials or ingredients. When you buy a house, you don't buy something subpar. You want the structure to stand tall and strong. You build to earthquake standard. You understand that what you sow, you reap. The greater the investment, the greater the return. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And is it worthy of eternity? Here is a date and dessert idea for this section. You treat differently what you want to last forever. Go hot tubbing, followed by fried ice cream. Or chia pudding if you want the healthy route.
The girl and boy laughed as they twirled the crown and noted how odd a crown looked with only one simple gem. And they carried along their merry way, until they noticed something flitting around their heads, whirring and spinning and occasionally flouncing lightly ahead of them. They soon noticed a sparkly ruby suspended from the whirring object until it slowed enough for them to recognize a fairy with a ruby-red gem strapped to its body, weighing it down. The girl quickly offered assistance by lifting the weight of the ruby as the fairy declared, "It's yours now. Oh, and a marriage is equally proportionate to your investment," and flitted off. Of course, it perfectly fit the space next to the turquoise gem, and the ruby became
Gem number 2. A marriage is equally proportionate to your investment. I walked one sunny fall day into our county fairgrounds multi-purpose building where the community was holding a humanitarian service day. I gravitated toward a table where 4 older ladies were coloring children's games for refugees that might have children wanting something fun to do. You know, you're forced out of your home and country, and now what do you do with your antsy 4-year-old with only the clothes on your back? You give them a matching game to Velcro the healthy food item to the yummy plate and the unhealthy food item to the garbage plate. These 4 ladies chatted about the local goings-on, and I spied a perfect opportunity to glean from their wisdom. I hesitated as I grabbed a yellow marker to brighten an ear of corn with a smiley face, and asked myself, should I really interrupt them to ask them my dying question? And yes, amid our coloring frenzy, I asked, "Hey ladies, I'm doing some research about what makes a happy marriage, and I have the suspicion you ladies could give me some great tips." After a decent pause, one lady offered, "Well, it's good to feed them well." The other ladies snickered in agreement. Then another lady quipped, "Good communication." And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to get the textbook answers. Then the third lady jumped in. "They like to be pampered." And I couldn't hold back. "But so do we, right, ladies?" They nodded, but I'm not sure they were convinced it shouldn't just be the guy who gets spoiled. I was surprised by the intensity of the fourth woman who asserted in a British accent, "Love them unconditionally, without expectation, because you can't change them. I just lost my husband 2 months back, and I can tell you, the small things don't matter. They really don't matter. Don't worry about your husband's socks on the floor and his little things that bother you, because in the end they really just do not matter. And you may even love picking up those socks on the floor after they're gone, and it really does go quick. Marriage goes by so quickly." Maybe to lighten the mood, another lady added, "Have humor in marriage, because it's better to laugh than to cry. Have fun times together, especially dates and other things you like to do together." The youngest of the ladies, though still my senior by far, offered, "If your communication isn't going well, then speak to them in their love language. Find other ways to communicate that will work better." I thought that to be a valuable piece, then asked, "Any other advice? This is wonderful." The quietest of the ladies spoke up. "Loving like Christ is the most important thing you can do in your marriage relationship." And I then had to add, from my own personal experience, "And though you may lose your life to Christ, that does not mean also losing yourself over your spouse." I'm not sure they knew what to think of that, which is the very premise of the Love Zone marriage. God first, and then love of spouse as love of self. But the conversation soon shifted to their grandchildren, and I mused on their advice as I tinted happy grapes purple. Not long after this, I was helping an elderly lady whose husband had just died of a brain tumor move out of her house. She asked me to load up the books in her bookcase and bring them all to Goodwill. I paused over and flipped through many of the novels and instructional guides in her bookcase, but even as an avid reader, I only kept one. Married for Life, Inspirations from Those Married 50 Years or More by Bill Moreland. I poured through this book of how to stay happily married, supplied by over 100 couples who've made it to the golden anniversary, and condensed this whole book of excellent, and some not so excellent to me, advice into 4 solid points, which I'd like to let you in on. The 4 basic points of marriage advice I condensed from over 100 couples married for over 50 years. But before I do, what top advice do you think these 100 plus couples lended? Often we will hear marriage struggles stem from finances, communication, sex, commitment, values or morals, shared interests. So I was super excited to find these results. The top 4 points of marriage advice. Number 1, spend time together. Time is oxygen in a marriage. Have fun. Share common goals. Work together. Even Adam and Eve had to work in the garden. Laugh. Make the best of things. Be grateful. Concentrate on what really matters. Focus on each other. Base marriage on real, not romantic love. Create unity and oneness. Look for and encourage spiritual gifts. Volunteer, serve together. Give of yourself fully, though I have a few reservations about that one. Work as a team. Use inner strength when things are tough. Realize busy spouses stay content. Make your promises your priorities. Keep trust strong at the heart level. Second top point. Let the other become themselves. Encourage their growth. Pray for each other. Don't try to change them. Don't overworry. Appreciate differences. They make us stronger. Know that storms happen, then blow away. Consider a spouse's wishes. Be willing to sacrifice your all. And as I added, don't lose yourself so you have nothing to give. The number 3 point. Look over inevitable flaws. Forgive. Be flexible. Ignore little things. Accept our wholeness of good and bad. After the struggle comes the blessings. Some recommend divorce is not an option, but I say divorce has to be an option or it isn't a choice, but a force. Embrace life and its challenges. Look over and leave faults in each other to God. And a little side note to this one, communicate well. Don't expect your spouse to be a mind reader. Fight fair. Focus on the issue at hand. Allow each other to speak. Talk with God first before spouse. Which takes us nicely into the 4th point, trust God in your marriage. He commissions it and knows all the answers. Pray for help from the perfect creator of the institution. He knows all the instructions as the creator. The Lord changes our hearts to love. Learn from those with a godly example. God wants your success. The best love in marriage is emulating the Lord's perfect love for us. So to recap, spend quality time together. Let the other become themselves. Look over inevitable flaws and also communicate well. And lastly, trust God in your marriage. And a takeaway I gathered, a marriage is equally proportionate to your investment. What you give in marriage is what you will reap. Simple mathematics, really. And for a date idea as you work on spending quality time together, go dancing. And if you don't know a place to waltz, cha-cha, or country swing, push aside the chairs in the dining room and there you go. I can't tell you how many times my husband and I have done just that. There are plenty of helpful tutorials on YouTube, and a phone in your hubby's shirt pocket playing the music works just right. Follow it up with apple crisp, peach cobbler, or cherry dump with ice cream on top, cooking while you're avoiding those ever-present chair legs.
Imagine the surprise of the boy and the girl when suddenly an old ogre stepped from behind a large gnarled tree. He boomed, "Who goes there?" The boy stammered, "We are on a treasure hunt. We seek for gem treasure." The ogre grimaced and challenged, "Well, you won't ever get my sapphire. Mine, mine." Until the ogre's wife stepped out from behind him and commanded in exasperation, "What good has it ever done you? It looks like it fits perfectly in the spot on that crown." The ogre frowned as his wife pulled the blue sapphire from his grasp and handed it over, stating, "You must see your part in marriage with new eyes." They turned and hobbled off as the two lovers danced off in delight with their blue sapphire. The boy and the girl now had
Gem number 3, see your part in marriage with new eyes. Think about how we see. One eye to see the world with is wonderful, even miraculous. And a second eye, and a whole new world opens up with greater clarity. Now imagine looking down on what you see with those 2 eyes, like a drone that lifts up above everything and has new perspective. And you suddenly have another dimension, that 3rd dimension. Here are a few ways to look at this. You are one eye. Your husband is the second eye, intended to make marriage take on new perspective, like another viewpoint with greater clarity, a blessing. Think of a page and ink. If you want to impart information, the page alone or the ink alone isn't as effective as when you combine them together. One is solid, one is liquid, one is light, the other dark. One has a uniform appearance, and the other flows into multiple shapes. Alone, both have function and intrinsic value, but together they acquire power to communicate. The page and ink work in tandem, synergistically. Like with marriage, creating a life together they could have never known apart, brought together by God. If you were to be the third eye looking outside the box, outside what you normally see, what is really there? Can you see your part in marriage? How you would be to live with? How you would see things as a third-party eyewitness? How would this witnessing come across devoid of opinion or judgment, both for good or bad? A spouse can help you see God more clearly, and when done right, God becomes the third dimension view, a third omniscient viewpoint, a godly perspective. That may tell you, if you tap into it, that everything looks right, that you are right on track in marriage, or that you may need to adjust some things to see better. That maybe you are hogging the field of vision, or not supplying enough, or trying to change what you shouldn't. In Matthew 7:3 we read, "And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye?" If your spouse reached in and tried to grab the sawdust out of your eye, it really wouldn't work. We can only fix and change ourselves. Let God in so you both can see eye to eye. To grasp how wide, long, and deep is the love of Christ. Ephesians 3:18. Think about how we might reflect on God's nature like a mirror we might look into. God wants our marriage to reflect His nature like a mirror, so that looking with two wonderful eyes into His nature fills us with His abiding and never-ending love, which is a goal of our marriage union. If you are seeing your spouse with something less than God's nature would instruct you, maybe you need to pull out some clarifying eye drops. And here's a date idea. Go watch a play together, whether it be a community or school play or a professional Broadway production, and then go eat some carrot cake with droopy cream cheese frosting. Carrots for vitamin A for good vision, right? And see your part in marriage with new eyes.
The girl had never met up with, nor had she ever thought she would meet up with, a half-human, half-man, a centaur, standing bold and stately next to a tall fir. As if he'd predicted their approach, he lifted a hoof with a white moonstone gem in it and boomed, "Approach marriage from an inspired mindset." "Whatever does that mean?" asked the girl as she grabbed the stone. But without another word, the centaur was gone as quickly as he'd appeared. They added the white moonstone to the crown, which became
Gem number 4. Approach marriage from an inspired mindset. Do you remember back when we started hearing about the growth versus the fixed mindset? The growth concept is encouraged on the opening webpage of our local school district. Here's a brief rundown of the two. Growth mindset is freedom. Persevere in the face of failures. Effort is required to build new skills. Find inspiration in others' success. Embrace challenges. Accept criticism. Desire to learn. Build abilities. And the fixed mindset is limiting. Avoid challenges. Give up easily. Threatened by others' success. Desire to look smart. Effort is fruitless. Ignore feedback. Fixed abilities. So I had to read the book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. I left the book a little unsettled. As one who has suffered from anxiety issues all my life, I couldn't help but feel the pull of anxiety that you just can't be enough in the fixed mindset. So let's push you into the discomfort zone of the growth mindset. Would you agree that anxiety disorders have skyrocketed over the years since the growth mindset was presented? After reading this book, I pondered upon it for a few years, then finally came to a conclusion. You may have a growth or a fixed mindset. Put hastily, you have someone who can boldly think outside the box, the growth mindset, or someone who will miserably maintain their strict standards into the indefinite future, the fixed mindset. The problem with the two is that the fixed mindset creates complacency, and the growth mindset can orchestrate anxiety. But what happens when you marry the two, growth plus fixed? You know what works for you from advisable past experience, and then you push yourself a little, but not to a point of anxiety, which creates change. So what can bridge that gap from the growth to the fixed? Well, it's the inspired. The inspired mindset facilitates your tapping into your own internal, unadulterated truth for you, reaching to the divine to encompass real truth and knowledge. You find points of direction when melding the inspired with the growth, and acceptance combining the fixed and the inspired, which encapsulates a beautiful chemistry of movement, surrender, and revelation. Which means in marriage, you have the benefits of all three. If you can't figure out marriage in a fixed or growth mindset, as in, can't live with them, can't live without them, then add a holy peace that speaks truth for your union, working from an inspired mindset that pushes through chaos not working in marriage. The inspired mindset in marriage means that you have everything you need for a good marriage because God provides it. This is faith. That sometimes it is little incremental things, line upon line and precept upon precept, that make all the difference in a good marital union. See Isaiah 28, verse 10. That when things seem to be going terribly wrong, that there is an equally wonderful right. Where is the silver lining in the otherwise dark cloud? That you do things even when they don't make sense, when feeling spiritually suggested to do that thing. That if you are struggling in marriage, there's probably some meaning to the experience that you need to work on for yourself. Control issues become surrendered for what really is in your stewardship, which is likely much less than you think in some ways, and much more in other ways. You understand pride and stubbornness for what they are and learn to be open in a healthy relationship of being known and knowable. That you put your spouse in God's hands. Heavenly parents know all the answers. They prescribed the union and wrote the instruction manual on how to make it a viable blessing. They know the directions perfectly, customized to you too. It's like going to the source of the headwaters. The source of the water, as God, is clear as you let Him carry you through to His wellspring of truth and happiness. And if you don't have God in your life and in your marriage, why not? Why miss out on that wonderful trilogy of truth and support in a marriage? In your marriage mindset making things work, remember that God is never in a hurry and is never a moment too late. That things may not be according to your timeline, but they are definitely in God's timeline for you. Your growth, inspired direction, acceptance, inspired surrender, is perfect for right now. Now for a date idea. My husband once invited me into our bedroom where an actual 4-man dome tent was set up. Inside, a laptop displayed a video of a roaring fire, and he'd positioned our lizard chairs that sit on the ground like stadium chairs around a Scrabble board. Now, you can do any word game you want, but we had a lot of fun with this makeshift Scrabble in the great outdoors. You don't have to set up a tent for your next date. But how about a good word game challenge around a roaring fire? Want a dessert that pushes you into a different mindset? Try punch bowl cake. Make up a cake mix according to directions on the box. Prepare your instant pudding of choice. A large box is good, and be ready to use it before it sets up. And have a container of whipped topping ready. In a pretty clear bowl, like a fruit bowl, or trifle bowl, grab handfuls of the prepared cake and throw it into the bowl. Drizzle with the unset prepared pudding, then gob on the whipped topping, layering each of these repeatedly, randomly. Cake, pudding, and whipped topping until they are gone. Add cherries on top, or any other topping that suits your fancy. This is a quick, pretty dessert that truly satisfies.
The boy and girl approached a pool of water and bent down for a long, luscious drink of cool water when they noticed a large fish tail in the water beneath. Not only did it have a tail, but the half top of it was a human woman. "A mermaid!" the girl exclaimed. And sure enough, lovely amethyst eyes approached as the mermaid surfaced, pulling the amethyst stone from an eye and pushing it into the fifth spot of the crown. She cooed, "Love and respect go hand in hand in hand," and swam off before they could get in a word edgewise. The girl reflected, "I've now actually seen a mermaid. What a strange day with quite an assortment of creatures." The amethyst became
Gem number 5. Love and respect go hand in hand in hand. I read from Married for Life. Are you familiar with the ropes course? The series of outdoor exercises that companies sometimes use to encourage employees to develop a sense of team spirit and camaraderie? Part of the training includes using ropes high above the ground to traverse the distance between two trees. Safety and success depends more upon teamwork and trust than on the individual strength and prowess. It's a bonding experience for the participants who learn that they can rely on their teammates to protect them, guide them, and help them prevail. Perhaps every engaged couple should be required to take the ropes course as part of their premarital counseling. What a great lesson for two people to grasp as they embark on their married life together. Both would come to realize that they cannot do it on their own. They need the help of another, and their partner is on their side, standing alongside them, pulling with them to succeed. How much easier do things become in a relationship when we rely on each other for what we can, assuming willingness and that the stewardship is appropriate. Dr. Jill C. Manning, licensed marriage family therapist, enumerates 15 healthy marriage characteristics, and here they are. 1. A belief in the institution of marriage. 2. Ability to be flexible in transitions and change. 3. An assumption of permanence in marriage. 4. Mutual enjoyment of shared time together. 5. Fidelity, emotional, physical, and sexual. 6. Sexual relations that strengthen the marital bond. 7. Positive thoughts and interactions over the negative. Remember John Gottman's 5 good 2-1 interactions in marriage. 8. A sense of spirituality. 9. Cooperation. 10. Feeling appreciated. 11. Good communication. 12. Mutual respect. 13. Mutual support. 14. Shared values. And 15. Trust. As you look at this list, do you feel you have these 15 characteristics in your marriage? What is lacking? What is strong? What could you work on? What can you appreciate about your marriage? One of these 15 characteristics is mutual respect. I once read a popular book about love and respect in marriage. I must point out here that although authors, like those of this book I read, will often say that a woman needs love and a man needs respect, I believe it depends on your personality, man or woman. If you'll remember from my Love Zone Marriage 6 course, Character Considerations in Marriage, you'll remember that Carol Tuttle's Energy Type 4 loves respect, no matter the gender. And some men are simply more loving and soft and don't care as much about respect. We all know the type, right? Carol Tuttle's energy type for this would be the sensitive type 2, male or female. So I wouldn't generalize respect and love per gender. And ultimately, we all want a little of both, right? They go hand in hand. You love those you respect, and you respect those you love. Sometimes you have to take a risk to discover this important truth about marriage. Your partner is your partner, not your enemy. When you succeed, your spouse wins, and vice versa. God has put the two of you together to help one another. He's placed you on the same team, and He Himself is there beside you, His hands on the ropes, ready to provide protection, guidance, and assistance. As Psalm 73:23 says, "Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by the right hand." You lovingly place both your spouse's hand and your hand in God's hands. For a date idea, use those hands to give each other a massage. Who doesn't love having someone's hands deliver a good massage? And make cookies together. Here's one of my favorite cookie recipes, and yes, the dough really does need to chill. This chill time is the time to give each other those massages.
Quite an assortment of creatures they had witnessed this day indeed. And no stranger was the werewolf they found defending the path, showing its white fangs. Fortunately, it was day, so they weren't as nervous that it would attack, but they did wonder if they should approach. The boy was about to speak, when to their surprise, the werewolf directed his next words to the girl. To be treated like a queen, you expect it, teach it, nurture it. It was then that the girl noticed two small cubs nestled beneath their mother, and the girl realized this was a she-wolf, who undoubtedly insisted on her rightly queenhood. She bowed in respect, and she grasped the proffered emerald green stone, as green as the werewolf's eyes. They pushed into the crown.
Gem number 6. To be treated like a queen, you expect it, teach it, nurture it. Have you ever seen two lawns of grass settled one next to the other, and one is beautiful while the other lawn looks neglected? Weeds, dry spots, holes. How is it they can be so different when right next to each other? We may think we know what to do for a lawn until we really do take care of a lawn. We may think pulling up weeds is the answer, when maybe the right fertilizer is the key. We may think we're watering it right, when maybe a tree is blocking the sprinklers unbeknownst to us. We may throw our hands up in disgust, declaring, "I'm just gonna start all over with Roundup and grass seed," or "This yard makes moving to another house tempting." But if you keep doing what you really don't know how to do, it will stay the same, year to year and yard to yard. And you wonder how the next-door neighbor can work the same soil with such promising results. After all, they are right next to each other. Such it is with marriage. How do the next-door neighbors keep their lawn and their marriage so well? We may think another husband is the answer. Certainly the next partner we attract will have everything perfect for us, right? Unless we have the correct knowledge, tools, and supplies to figure out how to do it right, we'll continue this same process until we drop something, maybe the dandelion digger or our pride, and ask the neighbor just how they do it. Of course, our middle-aged neighbors tell us just the fertilizer to buy that everyone knows works, obviously. And, well, marriage, they say, just treat her like the queen she is. The queen lifts her shoulders and cocks her head like she doesn't know what they do, but it works. And we start to observe them through their windows in the next house over with that perfect lawn. They set the table and clean up the dinner together. They are doing small acts of kindness through the day, like bringing one a glass of water or a cozy pillow. They host others, where both look welcoming and fresh. Sometimes he surprises her, like with a small gift of jewelry or a sweet treat. Or they watch a funny video together. If she's mad, soon her husband has calmed her down, guiding her to a place where he can hold her hand and talk it out. Shame on you for your marriage help-stalking tendency to peep into their windows. So the next time their adult kids visit, you pull them aside onto your failing lawn and ask, "Hey, it seems like your parents have really got it together. What would you say they do that makes them so successful?" Their adult kids look at each other, then start talking. They listen to each other and don't try to fix, unless specifically asking for solutions. I've heard them ask one habit or mannerism one can change for the other. This doesn't mean the one has to do it, but isn't it nice to know what would make the other more comfortable? They let each other take a break from something for a while, like hiring out the yard work when it gets too much, or giving her a break in the kitchen while he experiments with his new air fryer and she cuddles up with a good book. They ask about each other's life or day, then hone in or follow up on something to show they care about what the other cares about. One daughter laughs, and if you don't care about it, like mom not liking car racing, you can lightly and jokingly let them know, but you still care about them. They acknowledge the things each other does that they like how nicely dad folds the laundry. They support each other's dreams and goals, like when mom went back to school. They express appreciation how each likes to receive it, my mom with words, my dad with affection. And his son finishes off the list. One thing I once heard my dad ask when he didn't know I was listening was he asked her how he could be a blessing to her. If marriage is a blessing one to another, what does that even look like? You thank them as they saunter to their backyard towards a savory-smelling barbecue. What else would you add to this list that is working for you? So often, we can see the dry spots in the lawn and really focus on what is not working in our yard, but we can instead see what is really working. Like maybe we really do have a handle on the weeds in the yard, maybe better than we even realize. One definition of insanity: doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results. Be willing to change and be humble, and know that one day we may be the one with the perfect yard telling our neighbor exactly what we've done. How to be treated like a queen? Expect it, teach it, nurture it, just like the verdant lawn. If you visit a castle or a fancy establishment, it goes without saying that you expect the lawn will be gorgeous. I once visited a museum in the heart of Salt Lake City that had me double-taking my approach to the building. Where is the entrance? Is this really the address of the museum? Then we noticed a few signs around that said, "We are letting nature take its course." That was the subconscious symbol. We questioned the entrance to the building because the grounds had been severely neglected, even attracting garbage among the natural growth. You expect the surroundings of something nice to also be nice. You expect the respect and honor and courtesy and kindness and love of someone worth it, because you are totally worth it, because you are totally worthy of it. Henry Taylor says, "A happy home is where the wife is treated like a queen and the husband is treated like a king." And so it is not only marrying the right partner, it is being the right partner. You expect a lush green lawn. You've given your lawn attention, but it doesn't overtake your day or your life. It's the right balance of attention. It's controlling what's yours, not what is your spouse's. If one of you has a bad day, that doesn't mean everyone's day becomes bad. You expect love because it's always there with you, overflowing when you let it, and everyone benefits. To be treated like a queen, you teach it. It took me much talking to my own neighbors to find out just the method for a thick green lawn. The fertilizer brand, the best feeding and watering schedule of grass of those living in a desert, and my own figuring out the most effective weed management. A queen acts and speaks assertively about how she will be treated. Through calm and patient teaching, I expect my quarters will be ready by 9 p.m. I take my tea at 3 p.m. on the veranda. Is this preposterous to expect? Well, if she doesn't set a standard, who can know how to follow it? Or worse, take time and effort forever doing what doesn't work. And in the end, if tea doesn't show up, she takes matters into her own hands. She is in her own power. You teach by being knowable, easy to cater to, using boundaries when necessary, imparting your wishes and desires, but having humility enough to know sometimes you must be your own creator of the things you want and need, but they have been expressed, so there's no question. And conversely, a queen is open to knowing. She is observant and aware of her subjects, of her staff, of her king. She possesses the 3 wisdoms of 1. The ability to truly listen to herself, to others, to God. 1 Corinthians 3:19 says, For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. In other words, give full credit to God for wisdom for living well. The second wisdom, the wisdom of contemplating and meditating. She uses her God-given reasoning to access information, knowledge, and eventual wisdom and truth. And the third wisdom, the gift of deciding, doing what is best for everyone involved through divine accessing, inner strength, and the power of her mind. And lastly, she nurtures her queenhood through self-knowledge. Am I really worthy of being treated like a queen? Self-acceptance, self-care. She fills the problem areas. If I don't get my tea at 3 p.m., my royal butler may need further instruction or a new timepiece. She knows what she wants and trusts those needs will be met. She perseveres for what she wants with commitment and patience. A queen doesn't just sit on her regal throne and make demands. She works in behalf of her people. She attends meetings and administers law. She visits charities and hosts events. She encourages certain courses of action and warns against others. She acts purposely, intentionally, and kindly. To nurture your queenhood, you get in touch with your heavenly makers for reminders on what it means for you to be treated like a queen. Now for a date and dessert idea. Crumpets and croquet. And since I've done neither of those, how about cheesecake and pickleball? As they continued their forest walk, perplexed by the range of unknown species they had met that day, the girl and boy noticed a large shadow darkening the sun. They held their arms over their eyes as they soon noticed feathers in their view. Closer and closer it approached until they recognized a phoenix descending into the space. As it gracefully landed in a bed of fallen leaves, they noticed another bird behind it landing as well. 2 birds within 1 shot, thought the boy. The first phoenix introduced himself. I am Feng, and this is my lovebird, Huang. We come in peace. Huang held out a lovely, fiery orange garnet as she proclaimed, Healthy loving recognizes balances. When you find this balance, you will find eternal reward. And without another word, the boy and girl saw the phoenix rising back into the warming sunlight. And they set the orange garnet into the crown as gem number 7, healthy loving recognizes balances. I once taught Sunday school at church for a small group of darling toddlers. I stole a bucket of plastic blocks from the nursery next door to teach my little lesson on keeping God's commandments. I really just meant to keep their hands busy while I attempted to teach even the smallest of virtues. I divided the blocks amongst the group of 5 boys and girls and let them build while we talked about not lying, not cheating, not stealing, and so forth. I soon noticed frustration as none of them could keep even 3 blocks erect on the base of tight carpet. I sprung into action as I noticed the potential here. I said, crawling in my skirts onto the floor with them, Hey, should we try something? Everyone push your blocks to the middle. I formed a flat base of 4 blocks, each touching one another, and asked one girl, What can you do to keep God's commandments? She answered, Share my toys with my brother, to which I encouraged her to add her block in the center above the base of 4. A young boy caught on quickly and offered, Do my jobs when my mom asks, to which he then added his block. The children insisted on more and more turns, and soon we were adding blocks in a frenzy, forgetting to mention how we'll keep God's commandments. And I smartly implemented a tool I once saw the Oreo Stacker world record keeper use. The young man trying to build the highest Oreo tower of 21 cookies would straighten out the cookies from time to time so they didn't cause less integrity to the tower. I did this, straightening all those blocks until the very last block, reaching as high as one of the children. We clapped and celebrated, and one boy, of course, immediately asked if he could knock it over. We enjoyed the structure a moment later, then cheered as it toppled. Initially, we couldn't do much when the blocks rested on the bumpy carpet, but once we set that foundation, off we went. Such it is with marriage. We must set our blocks and foundation to build a strong, stately tower of height and success. So let me introduce you to the 4 stacking block essentials of a successful marriage. The first block, L on the block, is for love. Selfless, humble, patient, forgiving, hopeful, kind, unfailing love. The next block, the T block, is for trust, a rock-solid connector as long as it is cherished and protected. The third block, C, is for commitment, keeping vows and covenants no matter what. Commitment is the cornerstone that supports security, which ironically creates freedom, like my teaching those toddlers about keeping the commandments so they can be ultimately free. And finally, the fourth block, F. Faith is the chief cornerstone. Faith stems from a belief in the marriage system that encourages you that your investment will be worth it. Faith unites the entire structure so that it stands straight and tall, as will your marriage. At its core, the chief cornerstone is Jesus Christ. Faith in a power greater than our own, which makes our marriage greater too. Ephesians 2:19-21 says, "Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord." These 4 blocks create a balanced loving. As you'll see on each of these blocks, I have 4 characteristics of balanced loving. The first one on the love block is eliminating negativity. We can stop negative thought patterns, not allow our concerns to become worries. We can choose to avoid nagging and constant criticism, and we can process our negative emotions. There are so many ways to process our negative emotions, but the most effective way that I find is through a burn journal where I can just write down the things that are bothering me for no one ever to see them. It's like a therapist on paper. The next block, the blue block of trust, has emphasizing the positive. We can recognize positive qualities and feel gratitude and forgiveness towards our spouse. We can have faith and trust in ourselves, in other people, and in God. On the green block, commitment, we have letting things go. Letting go of enmeshment and codependent behaviors that make both of you dependent on each other for your being okay. Letting go of unhealthy control. Understanding what we can change and cannot change, and letting others be responsible and grow. And reset, releasing our burdens and cares, allowing ourselves freedom and happiness in our lives. More on reset in a moment. And the last block, faith, building up more of what we need. We communicate respectfully, honestly, expressing our concerns. We establish healthy boundaries without blame, shame, or anger. We accept reality, living presently, and we express and work for more of what we need instead of what we don't need. These 4 stacking blocks create balance. If it feels like your marital tower is continually falling over, you can't keep it straight and tall, know this: life is just that. Tumbling tower after tumbling tower. You figure out new things that work. You reach a new level, which requires a newly built tower to level up. You are learning, and the longer it takes to learn the lesson, the harder to keep the tower upright, the longer the effects of the lesson learned. That is, if you don't give up and let the blocks stay scattered. When done well, you learn tips and techniques that keep the tower taller longer. You correct your course, find the areas of weakness in the structure, and renew your trust, commitment, faith, and love. And remember this: you haven't wasted anything. You couldn't have had a different or better marriage than exactly the one you have. It's all correct for you, and you can look forward to a bright relationship moving forward. On the letting go block, I mentioned reset, which I love the idea of, and which I must expound on here. The movie The Cutting Edge from the 90s has a young man and woman competing in figure skating. The young woman, Kate, realizes the power of being able to use her toe pick on the front of her skate to stop or create friction to make the moves she wants. She taunts her dancing partner, Doug, by yelling out, toothpick. At times she uses it, and he should have as well, and didn't. I changed toothpick in my life to reset. You can reset anything you want to, just like you might a phone, a password, or a sink disposal. You don't have to keep what's behind you. Unuseful ruminating thoughts? Reset. Be done with those thoughts. Got a bad habit? Reset. Onto a more helpful habit. Have parts of a relationship you regret? Reset. To better parts of a relationship. If you've had a marriage history you'd rather not repeat, know that you can always reset your marriage. Every day can start anew with a new set of blocks to build your marriage that day. And when you fall into he said, she said, or he'll never, or I'll never, or this is just the way he is, or I am, time for reset. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, what do I need to reset? And better yet, make it a mental habit to reset when you get stuck in the negativity of the tumbling blocks. As a married couple, we are a team. Like blocks, we build each other up. Together, we are strong. I only benefit when I build him up so that we can both be greater. Like a dance duo, we finish the dance holding on to each other. Now for a date and dessert idea. Go build something. A snowman, a fort, a Jenga tower. Build a bear, like a love bear. And for dessert, you can build ice cream sundaes or a layered cake. The sky is the limit. The boy and the girl were immediately seized upon by some big black thing swirling among them in a black cape. "Let us be!" shouted the boy. But all they heard was a sinister laugh as the cape slowed its flowing and soon rested around a dark goblin. With a calculating eye, the goblin asked, "Have you come to steal my beautiful obsidian?" "Well, no one gets out of the forest alive with my obsidian. It's my obsession." The girl defended, "Of course, we never steal anyone's prized possession, and if you'd like, we have this crown to offer if you're so inclined to have it." The boy slowed her hand as she stretched the crown toward the hideous goblin. Then he pulled his hand away as he understood his beloved's giving heart. The goblin looked taken aback as he said, "Well, no one's ever offered me anything, so I will give you one of my obsidian pieces with a piece of advice probably no other goblin will ever offer you." He pulled out a shiny black-shaped obsidian rose and explained, "You must know this. Love expands like a flower." The boy and the girl, who had so recently feared being without their precious crown, looked at each other and laughed as they repeated, "A goblin is telling us love expands like a flower?" The goblin replaced his calculating eye as he dismissed them, saying, "Now be on with you, and thank you for your kindness." And they left with the jet black obsidian, which is gem number 8. Love expands like a flower. Think of a simple rose. It starts as a bud, bursting with potential, not quite beautiful yet, but because you see what it will be, it is already wonderful. Then it opens a bit more and you think it's just right. Then it opens even more and you now believe it's perfect. Then somehow it opens more again and you think it can't possibly get any better or more beautiful, until it does. And it opened so wide and had so many petals you didn't know could be nestled in there. Love is like that flower. Our ability to love expands in practiced time. Love is always there, like the petals in waiting. You don't receive love from someone. You recognize it in yourself, already full of love. Love is one-sided. You have it because you accept it. You already are love if you allow it. Real love is fully accepting with no goals, no strings attached. Love is opened up, expanded like the rose. And then you benefit all around you because it spills out of you. Your spouse doesn't give you love. If that were the case, then your spouse would have control over your emotions. They can tell you all day they love you, but you may simply not receive it. It hasn't opened within you. If you say you don't receive love, it's your own problem if it's already inside you. As a result, some people may never access your love stored within. Some of us may think we aren't loving enough or have been accused as such, but that's not in our control to measure the love that someone feels from us. And maybe we think love means having a greater capacity than we do. It feels like we can never generate enough. But maybe love doesn't need to run as deep as we think for it to count. It can be enough as it is. The rose opened to an adequate amount, a sustainable amount that you let loose. Love is connecting on the level of psychological, verbal, emotional, social, spiritual, intellectual, and physical. But that's for each of you to determine in a relationship. What one spouse may think is enough of such connecting, the other spouse thinks is half of what they want. In fact, I think this is true of most marriages. One spouse thinks the love is adequate and the other doesn't. But if you are opening up your love, it is the right amount. If we are to be like Jesus Christ, we learn to love without condition. This can be hard. He completely frustrates me, and I love him. If you can practice getting into a space of unconditionally loving, you're going to upset me and I perceive you making me feel less than, but nevertheless, I still love you. Sometimes it truly feels like learning to love the enemy. 1 Corinthians 13 lists the virtues of love. Love is patient, kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, isn't proud, doesn't dishonor others, isn't self-seeking, though you be sure to get adequate self-care, is not easily angered, keeps no record of wrongs, rejoices in the truth, protects, trusts, hopes, perseveres. Remember, you don't have love for your spouse. You are love. It's already inside you, and it reaches to them. So it's really about becoming love. Where it is you find a weakness in them, it also exists somewhere in you and is a strength at some point. For example, if you feel they aren't loving you enough, where are you not loving yourself enough? And one step further, where are you not understanding godly love within you? So once becoming love becomes more normal, you recognize a foundation of love, but it may not be quite the romantic love we expect in marriage. We can break down love into 3 parts: eros, romantic love, philia, brotherly love, and agape, God's divine love or unconditional love. So agape and philia love may result from practicing becoming unconditional love that spills from you. But what of eros, the romantic love? We break this romantic love into eros and thanatos love. Eros is drive of life, creativity, sexuality, self-satisfaction, and species preservation. Thanatos is conversely aggression, violence, and death. Before you get too concerned, when we have both in marriage, it creates a tension. This is where the possibility of passion exists, its opposites attracting in action. It's what makes marriage unique. If we define love as a combining of commitment, intimacy, knowing and being known, and passion, passion is born of quality time and experience together, which, if that isn't working to build passion, is because of a lack of safety, which stems back to a lack of intimacy, of truly knowing and being knowable, which can take an uncomfortable amount of openness. It means really paying attention to your true self and reaching inside of you for truth. What do you really feel for yourself? What do you really feel for your spouse, assuming love already exists inside you, planted by our heavenly parents? True love can feel small at first, though potentially deep, a sprouting seed that feels intense with a possibility of growth. Side note, if you'll remember from my Love Zone Marriage 11 class on connecting intimately, we have to take off the brakes and engage the accelerator to create passion. For love to become more than philia, or that brotherly love, or agape, God's unconditional love, the love that sets us apart from loving dear family members and good neighbors, we may need more than the perceived love to feel turned on. As a majority of females are lower desire, females often need to be convinced and talked into sexual intimacy, so it's not fair to say that increasing love equals increasing desire for sexual connection. So if you were in a place of deciding to stay in a marriage or to leave, Considering we are practicing becoming love, if you were to leave your spouse, it would be in a place of full love for yourself and him. And if you decided you were not loving yourself and him by staying, that would be correct for you to leave. If you can't say that would be the case, leaving from full love, where do you need to work on you? We can teach our spouse how to love us better, which is to really say that is his part in helping us access love already within us. It's up to him to decide to do as we teach, and if he doesn't, we still love him anyway. Maybe not as passionately, but as a form of charity. But chances are good if he has the slightest idea of how you want to be treated, he'll try to do it more, even if it isn't natural. Jesus loved people and taught them. We can do both. And same for your spouse. He can tell me how to bring out his love better, too. Jennifer von Leesen-Pfeiffer, marriage and sex expert, says, over time, we get expanded capacity to love whatever is. Our love can become more exposed, more practiced. So, how can we love better? In the book Wired for Love, Stan Tatkin outlines 10 points of how a couple can really be there for each other. I issue the caveat that differentiation in marriage says we need to be our own people, so that when we come together, the combining of two people makes a synergistic result. Here are Tatkin's 10 points. Wired for Love. First point, create a couple bubble. A safe zone where the relationship is always first. This place provides safety and protection. 2. Recognize your primitives and ambassadors. In our brain, this is the warring versus the loving brain, the defensive versus the proactive. Men are wired more for protection, the primitives, and women for connection, which would be more ambassadors. So the primitives can work against us and the ambassadors work for us. And a way that we can increase our ambassadors in our interactions is to notice the nuances in our speaking that send messages, even just a small fluctuation in the things we say. The third point, know if you are secure, an island, or a wave. Islands like solitude, this is me. But they might need help finding themselves. Waves come and go, back and forth, somewhat emotionally erratic. And it's helpful for both kinds to spend time around others who will anchor you. The anchors are the secure people who are unapologetically themselves, and they help others feel secure. But in the end, we don't try to change each other, whether we're an island or a wave or an anchor, but we do help. The fourth point, become experts on each other. Know each other's 3 or 4 vulnerabilities, how to counter them, and the 3 or 4 things that really work for them. You can help be their regulator. What can only we do as a marriage partner? Sometimes we think that we have maybe 100 vulnerabilities, but when it comes down to it, we just cycle around and around to 3 or 4. So know what those things are. And then know how to brighten, move, charm, and enamor each other, as only you can do. Fifth point, have a launching and a landing. The experts say that couples with a night and morning routine are happier. And this means you help put each other to bed or to greet each other in the morning and to have physical contact, like to snuggle and say words to each other that are comforting. And you do this even if you don't sleep at the same time. That if we have a launching and a landing together, no matter our sleep schedules, we're going to be happier. The 6th point is have a mind to know mine. You know each other in a simple glance or a body movement. When there's information to be shared or something that you need help with, you come to each other first. You are each other's go-to. 7, be wary of thirds. Other family members, friends, hobbies, or work can be a third. A primitive third, remember this is the slower, lower thinking brain, can pull away from the helpful ambassadors, the good helpers in our brain. So we need to recognize the thirds in our life. A primitive third is more relaxing to an island than being with their spouse. Primitive meaning pulling away. And waves may find a third that pulls them from their island. So thirds unmanaged become hated, a third will. Think about extra things like you're always watching sports. That might be an unmanaged third that becomes hated. The 8th point, fight smart. Learn to wrestle. They say that those who can rough and tumble fare better in marriage than those who have never learned to be aggressive. So we can rewire the dumb vagus to be a smart vagus. So stop talking if the dumb is winning. Default to the smart. We want to be able to wrestle and fight well. The 9th point, love up close. And for this point, Tatkin advises us to learn to gaze into each other's eyes. It's like with a little baby. You hold them close and you love them up close. So we want to keep love up close. Let those helpful ambassadors smile. The last point, touch 10 minutes a day for a healthier life. We all need 10 minutes minimum of physical contact to connect better and make us happier. And that's been proven over and over. These 10 points all support that when the king and queen are happy, all is well across the land. But what if one of you in the couple doesn't do these things well or is unwilling to try? What if one of you won't create the safety for a couple bubble, uses primitives over ambassadors too often, becomes extreme in their island or wave tendencies, doesn't want to be an expert on you, doesn't care about your owner's manual, doesn't agree launchings and landings are important, doesn't care to know your mind, invites thirds unwittingly and unabashedly, won't fight smart, won't love up close, or doesn't see the value in daily touching. This is where the differentiation theory of being your own person crosses the attachment theory of having a primary attachment figure. If your spouse or you is unwilling to work on moving closer to the other, then you work on you. Either process whatever gets in your way from connecting, or take matters into your own hands of fulfilling your needs and desires. For example, your spouse isn't safe in that they put you down often. You learn to be good with yourself. You can't depend on their support, so you reach inside yourself and upward toward God. You find others who can help you, wise people outside the marriage who are unbiased. We really don't have to struggle alone in relationship. Decide if this is really the relationship you want to stay in. Some people really are unwilling to change or improve, and that's when we decide if this is manageable. But as I see it, if God wants us together and we are somewhat trying, with patience and perseverance, our marriage can become something wonderful. And I've seen it over and over, including in my own marriage. So think on this list of 10 points. How could you better apply them? If you could pick one of them to work on, which would you choose? This life is all about small changes, little by little, sometimes big by big, but the little ones seem to make better habits. I want you to think for a moment of potential kinship, camaraderie, understanding, of being a blessing to each other in marriage, of feeling lucky to be married to the one you share this life with. Even if they don't seem like that person right now, remember, what you focus on grows. Would this be how God intended marriage? Like the funnest sleepover you could ever imagine, ever expanding, never ending? Remember that love, like that expanding flower, has capacity to give and experience increase, the merging and melding of your combined union to bliss. And ultimately, know that God is the potter of you, the flowers. Isaiah 64:8 says, "O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay, you are the potter. We are all the work of your hand." Now for a date and dessert idea. Go visit a professional garden or a nice park. Get some professional pictures of you two while you're there. And for a dessert, make some mud. Yes, mud. Mix together prepared chocolate pudding, an equal amount of whipped topping, and crushed Oreos to your liking. Refrigerate a few hours. Garnish with gummy worms. The two danced along the path, musing that they actually might make it out of the forest with these most precious gems dotting their crown. They could see the forest edge in the near distance, only 2 more stones, but maybe 8 was enough to satisfy the nymph who had promised the forever union earned by a filled crown. What they did not expect was a loud torching sound, followed by a rush of hot air. Had they run into some sort of geyser? Well, this wouldn't be the adventure they'd set out for if it weren't for a live, actual dragon lurching from its fiery lair, blocking their escape from the forest. "What will we ever do?" shouted the girl. The boy, always with a sword at the ready, stood before the dragon. "What do you want?" The dragon roared even louder, but didn't say a thing. Maybe this would be an encounter with an unspeaking animal. The boy advanced, holding his sword high. "I will fight for my sweetheart with all my heart. Here I come, O mighty dragon." And then they heard a whisper in the wake of the war. "What is the answer?" The answer? The dragon roared its loudest offering yet with a deafening whisper. "The answer!" The boy, heart pounding and sweat dripping all over, answered the obvious. "Love is the answer to everything." The dragon whispered slowly. "You answer correctly, and never forget, a king fights for his queen." And suddenly the dragon's head drooped, and it lay its head as if sleeping. The boy approached the dwindling smoke of the animal as it settled into its slumber. He then noticed within the dragon's open, slack mouth a large pink stone nestled on its tongue. An opal, he presumed. The dragon made no movement or objection to him taking the pink opal, placing it into the 9th spot on the crown. Gem number 9. A king fights for his queen. The setup. How often do we see this scenario in stories and books and movies? A man and a woman meet each other and immediately deem each other the enemy. He's such a fool. She's so spoiled. And they speak badly of one another to others and seemingly reject each other on all accounts. It becomes especially vicious as they slander one another at a group event, when in actuality, they're really emphasizing the meaning they each have to each other. Which leads us inevitably to the final surprise. An innocent intruder happens upon them in an odd place, like a closet or the kitchen, and they're fiercely kissing all over each other. What happened, we all wonder? Why the 180-degree change between the two? The answer? Tension. As I alluded to in the previous section, like a rubber band, tension holds things in place. Tension is the opposite of apathy, not caring. You don't see the man and the woman at the party who don't even know each other's names slandering each other and carrying on. And I'm not saying the dramatic tension has to happen for a relationship to spark, for oftentimes it's all lovey-dovey romance, as we've all often seen. But there's something about warrior chemistry. This is a dominantly yang or outward aspect, a masculine attribute, though both male and female certainly wield it at times. Warrior chemistry is all about manipulating your inner power to fight for that which you truly desire. It's obviously used in wartime. It's the mama bear. It's adrenaline when any attack is on. It's protecting your country, your land, your loved ones. It's based on deep-seated values, such that it needs little prompting to emerge. That deep-seated value is often fighting for any kind of freedom, fairness, and of course, survival. When that initially sparring couple complaining that he's such a fool and she's so spoiled eventually come together in that ecstatic tension, their warrior chemistry has sprung. Such it is that a king will fight for his queen. Men have the greater reservoirs of testosterone, which creates that role of protection, provision, and sometimes destruction. A queen who nurtures herself allows her king's protection, not that she always needs it, but that she accepts it as it improves and expands on his commitment to her. Studies even show that a man is wired physically for protection and a woman is wired for connection. In a day of fierce equal rights, though we still aren't there technically, women would do well to let go and let her man win her. Let her man fight for her well-being. Let him be knowledgeable, strong. not to say he always has to win, and presiding, like how we all know the man leads the woman in dancing. I fully support the man and the women acting equally in marriage, but there is certainly a place we neglect to let the man be her defending king. This is to say he sometimes helps her fight for herself. That's his role, fighting for the right. If she's given up on herself, he builds her up, protects her, and encourages her to follow her heart and be strong where she needs to. He knows her enough to know she needs help fighting for what she truly desires. When I think of all the queens I've read about in stories and seen in movies, the queen isn't always deferring to her man. She is strong alone while also being built up by him. And then they rule together, which I believe would be just like our heavenly parents. What follows are 12 characteristics we learn about how to model our heavenly king and queen. This list is from the book, In the Image of Our Heavenly Parents, A Couple's Guide to Creating a More Divine Marriage by Krishna Spalding, Finlayson Fife, Hanks, and Mansfield. So, the 12 principles for creating a more divine marriage are 1. We co-create a mutually empowering vision for our partnership. 2. We celebrate the strengths in each partner. 3. We invest in growth, our own personal growth, the growth of our partner, and the growth as a couple. 4. We share spiritual stewardship of our family. 5. We collaborate on leadership and decision-making. 6. We nurture and provide together. 7. We honor all contributions as equally valuable. 8. We access and utilize family resources equitably. 9. We address problems and resolve conflict respectfully. 10. We prioritize fun and friendship in our partnership. 11. We create mutual physical pleasure and nurturance. And 12. We find joy in the divine pattern of our heavenly parents. So how do you know if your king is acting the king? Well, a queen has the right to discernment. He may say all the right things and do all the right actions, but here's what makes the difference. Discernment, what she feels right about deep inside. Does she discern he is what he says he is? That's not at all to say he's perfect, but that he has an integrity behind what he says and does. It's an inner knowing, spirit to spirit. They help you feel safe, communicate easily, feel encouraged, trust, accept you, and we know that they are trying. They show up. They want what is best for you. That's not to say they do this all correctly for you, but it's mostly in that effort. You know, I used to think that most Harley motorcycle drivers, as heavily tattooed and bearded, were fierce, but I now mostly discern they are cuddly teddy bears. And we can know the difference between what they say or do and what they really are by their fruits. We see the fruits of what they are and do. Matthew chapter 7, 16 through 20 says, Ye shall know them by their fruits. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. Jesus said, a good tree will always produce good fruit. Sometimes it definitely takes time, but it does eventually produce. A good-hearted person will care about you. A pure heart becomes obvious. Galatians 5:22 says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I would say the same is of our King. Do their fruits change from time to time? Yes, some seasons the fruit is lacking. Sometimes it's changed within a month, or even day to day, that you can both discern the character and intention and see the fruits of your spouse. Same goes for you. We are all a changing mix, but what are we, or what do we see generally? So how can we increase this discernment, this inner knowing? Well, here are a few ideas. First, you can know yourself, have deep introspection, know your preferences and opinions, and journal about it. Find a place of neutrality, become grounded and centered to not be influenced by outside sources. Nature is a great place for this. Recognize truth. Challenge it, test it, fail in it until it becomes clear. See unhelpful empathy. where you're dragged down unhelpfully in others' emotions. Trust your gut and act on it until you truly trust it, again, through trial and error. Practice making good judgments. Notice confusion disappear. Determine what is useful, as opposed to good or bad. Look for useful. Listen to your heart. When your mind rules, dip into your heart. If you can be overly emotional, pay more attention to the purity of heart messages instead of reckless emotions. Counsel with others who can guide you. Ask God for His wisdom in your behalf. Choose influencers in your life carefully. They help clarify truth. Through your discernment and by recognizing His fruits of goodness, you begin to see how He does fight for you. And if He doesn't, maybe apathy has set in, remind Him why He wants to fight for you, His beloved. Be the queen He wants to fight for. So I issue you the 30-Day King Challenge. For the 30-Day King Challenge, each day write down how you saw your king treating you like a queen. Remember, what you focus on grows. Now for a date and dessert idea. Watch a Disney movie together with a king and queen. There's The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, Cinderella, Tangled, The Princess and the Frog, Moana, just to get you going. And for a dessert, a royal brownie sundae. A brownie base, vanilla ice cream next, followed by hot fudge sauce and a cherry on top. And by the way, this is what I served at my wedding reception 3 decades ago. Forever Marriage Meditation. Settle back for a moment and take some deep breaths. With each breath out, let go. And go within. You've found the one to spend your life with. They aren't perfect, but they are perfect for you. So you've agreed to this life, in sickness and in health, in pain and in sorrow, in joy and in growth. But ask yourself, what kind of marriage would you have if you knew it would last forever? Do you own anything you hope to never part with? Maybe even something you want to be buried with? My father bought a nice, solid harmonica when he served a religious mission in Germany at 20 years old. By some luck of the draw, he passed this heirloom on to me, a music lover. This harmonica is bigger than any other harmonica I've ever seen, feeling appreciable as you hold the solid metal between your hands. It's stored in a hand-crafted wooden box, held together by a hinge of sturdy, red, tight-knit tape, nestled in the treasures within my piano bench. And the smell. How do you describe the earthy, metallic, male scent of an old relic instrument? Needless to say, I hold this harmonica dear to me, and it's made it through many rounds of intense decluttering I find myself come Januaries. I don't think there will ever come a time I feel I am done with this harmonica, so I hang on to it. And when the children find it in the piano bench from time to time, I teach them to hold it in reverence, like a baby, and savor the deep chords it plays when they breathe in and out. In and out. What do you have that you believe you will hold on to indefinitely? That you might even want to be buried with? And how do you keep it safe and protected? Do you think of your spouse as someone you'd never want to part with? To be buried with by choice? Not just expectation? How would you treat this spouse of incalculable value? Would you hold them appreciably between your hands and savor their scent? Would you hold them in reverence and teach others how to do the same? Would you hold them dear, reserving a place of honor for them in your living? I think if I were to be with something for eternity, I would want to be fully real and comfortable with it. Do you feel you can be real and fully comfortable with your spouse? Do you know each other and revere each other enough to enjoy always being with them? Or at least most of the time. God matched you up to be an helpmeet to one another, a blessing, to be lucky to be paired together eternally. What would it take to want to be paired up forever with your sweet spouse? What would it take to make them a sweet spouse to you? I've often heard, families are forever, and if that is the case, heaven is comprised of the never-ending union of couples. If all the children and grandchildren and grandparents are joined in a forever marriage as couples, there are no solo, lonely children, but spouses upon spouses from Adam and Eve to the last of God's children born on earth. But why would God match us together as such? Well, if you think about it, solo would be too easy. Working for the reward from a purely selfish framework. Little sacrifice. Loving exactly who you want and how. Sure, you can seem pretty great when you are choosing how to give. Parenting certainly takes this concept to a whole new level. You're stuck with what you're given and decide to love it no matter what. But to get what you want, you simply can't do it alone because it wasn't set up that way. If we are to put off the natural or worldly man or woman to become a saint, becoming a saint could mean being willing to couple yourself with another to share eternal reward together. In fact, I might say that to reach heaven, you must give up the part of yourself that is most comfortable to hang on to. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Matthew 6:24. But it's not really giving up a part of yourself. It's trading in the part of you that craves the baseness of the world for the part of you that seeks God first. You access a power and a love greater than your own, God's, for a cause greater than your own, bringing someone else with you into His presence. A connection forged through God's love. So the paradox becomes the process of not exalting yourself above another in order to become exalted. Think on those who deserve recognition the most, wanting it the least. Or how those who have been deprived of love and privilege the most often learn how to give it the most. It's like eating crow again and again and thinking it tastes better each time. When you access a power and love greater than yourself, it benefits everyone. God's love and light are already inside you as His spiritual offspring. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. When you expose your love and light from His indispensable source, everyone receives more light. How do you access God's power to strengthen your marriage? Pray with all the energy of your heart for His love. Repent and forgive. Follow the Spirit that will show you all things you should do. Submit to God first. Let your light so shine, as we read in Matthew 5:16. Could it be that marital fulfillment is the most important part of our earthly journey? Learning to love, the most important task of this life? If it means loving God first to attain that light and integrity, followed by loving your spouse as yourself, and honoring covenants you've made with all three, it very well could be the most important part of your earthly journey, marital fulfillment. How would you live if in the individual race you must win, you cannot be exalted without each other? It's all about crossing the finish line together, whenever your time on earth is over. I love the idea of a tree forest. You know, full of swinging bridges from one tree to the next. Zip-lining fun from one platform to the next. A rope bridge with scary depths below. Hammocks under the tree canopy. And a several-level treehouse, like Swiss Family Robinson, to take a stop in a rocking chair for hot cocoa and chatting. A river runs through it, this tree forest, and the dense foliage is a veritable rainforest. I feel the exhilaration of the fresh moistness of the air, the perfect splash of sunshine dancing through the leaves on and off, the various fruit trees from which to pluck the next tasty delight. And then the biggest of the trees, having been hollowed out, sealed with arched doorways and magic passwords for entrance. When night falls, the moon and stars shed light onto beckoning pathways. You recline to a blanket of stars and the kiss of moonlight. The awesomeness of this place is the present-mindedness through which we view this existence. We aren't worried about the next hour or the next day. We just are. In this verdant wonderland, your best wish is your next reality. I can't help but think heaven will be somewhat like this picture I've painted. You exist at the perfect age, with wondersome strength and abilities. Every next step is an adventure or a comfort. And all the people joining you in this space are exactly who you want to be joyfully paired with. My husband and I once went camping, and it was like heaven. Mind you, I generally don't prefer camping. I'll take my bed and shower, thank you very much. But we grabbed some takeout, then found our reserved spot at the beautiful Hoodoo Cliff campground, where we sat at our secluded picnic table and dug in. We shared a vulnerable moment of divulging some of our greatest upcoming fears in life, which hugely diminished the anxiety of them, spreading them out between us. Then we decided to take a little hike around the rock formations surrounding the campground. We were just like a couple of teenagers. We had our fun, then retired to the back of our Suburban, where we laid out some cozy sleeping bags and cushions, no tents and fighting mosquitoes. And we watched the sun go down against the jagged cliffs. Soon we were watching a lightning storm through the many windows of our vehicle, while we kicked back in the utmost contentedness. Awaking to a gorgeous morning, we peeled up our sweet, juicy, homegrown peaches for breakfast and took a nature walk up bamboo plant-lined, creek-lined canyon. We moseyed on down and made our way to a diner for brunch. We returned home to find happy teens full of pizza and friendships from the night before, and we spent the next day on cloud 9. Could heaven be this way for eternity? Could we really all qualify for this? I believe so. It is possible. Eternal contentedness as a divine couple is possible and within reach. The boy and girl had made it through the forest, about to cross the verdant forest edge with their crown of 9 gems they had procured. They pondered aloud what the nymph had originally advised them at the onset of their journey. The nymph had said, "Your treasure is in your knowing. If you want something to last forever, you treat it differently." They felt they knew so much more about each other and what love really was. They did want their union to last forever, and they would treat it differently. The boy turned to the girl and promised, "Our marriage will be all that we hoped for. I just feel it." The girl replied, "Our marriage will be the crown jewel of all our relationships." Just then the mighty forest king stepped in front of them and pronounced, "That is correct. Yours will be the crown jewel on earth, a diamond, to last forever." And with that he produced a radiant white diamond which he pushed into the 10th spot on the crown. He spoke to the girl, "As a crown jewel, you must become a real goddess." And they finally had. Gem number 10. You must become a real goddess. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest, most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. From C.S. Lewis, The Weight of Glory. I believe we have the potential to become gods. My potential goddess is about knowing how to be on the goddess track, learning patience and acceptance and love on this earthly journey. The potential goddess patterns her life after her heavenly mother, the divine feminine, her eternal prototype. The potential goddess feels a God spark within her. She learns she really is something to revere, and really is nothing, from a place of humility and meekness. Remember, the meek inherit the world. She recognizes the adversary in her life, our darker shadow selves each possesses, the wall of ego and struggle we must transcend, emerging stronger because of it all. She celebrates opposition as extremes vying for a rightful place in her life, needing both ends of a spectrum to fully live. She recognizes shame and how to banish it. She understands the strength of the words she uses, the pen being mightier than the sword. She understands the importance of grounding and centering and emboldening her personal power center. She sees God's hand in her life, acknowledging a divine timetable, knowing he and his wife are never in a hurry and never a moment too late. She knows God's economics differ wildly from worldly economics and seeks after a wise abundance, striving for God's will over worldly matters. She appreciates her body, mind, and spirit for these wonderful gifts that blossom her into full godhood glory. She learns that loving is the key to manifesting true desires, truly finding herself because her godly potential expands. She feels that her holy heavenly parents are but a prayer away, championing her for full joy, heart nurturing, and creating the perfect here and now, for she is acquiring godhood. As I think of myself as this eventual goddess, this earth classroom setting up my goddess in training, I see myself in white, surrounded by white cloudy mists, pointing my finger at whatever I want and having it. The goddess realm includes a multitude of scenarios of all the good that can combine in one place to create an ecstatic experience, one we don't even know the likes of yet. Heaven! Singing your lungs out on stage and not being embarrassed or nervous. Enjoying an amusement park and you always get the very best seat first and without waiting, and the ride goes on and on and on. Cooking and baking and having someone hand you every ingredient, then judiciously cleaning up behind you. Heaven! What is heaven to you? What does it look like, sound like, feel like, smell like, taste like? And who is there with you? Well, it doesn't take many love songs to find that the answer to blissful relationship loving is to give your man all of your love. And if you believe those lyrics, you are totally loving wrong. You are essentially neglecting to love God with all your heart. Technically, your husband is next in line if you have made vows or covenants with him. He rightly has priority seating to your next affections, but after God. And in such ranking, things like children, jobs, sports, and really anything else takes a back seat to loving your spouse next, and God most. If you are to be composed of godly love as an eventual goddess, it is integral you learn this priority seating. You cleave unto each other, but with God first, while not becoming enmeshed. You please each other, but with God foremost, and self equally to spouse. Remember, the 2 great commandments includes loving yourself. You sacrifice for each other, but not more than you'd sacrifice for God or yourself. Serving means also receiving. You are willing to give of yourself, but not to the point of overburdened if you are in alignment with loving God first. You are a peacemaker, not a peacekeeper. You comfort and mourn with your husband in empathy, but you love yourself enough to not get stuck there. You create your lovely world, even if your spouse questions the possibility of such a world, because you have God primarily in mind and heart. You live by honesty, but only if it doesn't hurt you, loving yourself. You live by kindness, without having to be 100% available because your boundaries show self-love. You reach outward for help as needed if he seems he isn't loving you. Out of self-love, he isn't a God yet either. You bridge the gap between selfless and selfish at self-full. How can you both not love you if you are full of God's divinity as a divine child and all that entails? Issuing apologies takes your feelings into account. Loving self, you let him take responsibility of what is rightfully his. Trust is earned, not expected. You relinquish control and judgment to God, not your spouse, if you love and trust God most. Happiness is equally considered, loving husband as self. You realize that God trusts you to make your choices without his over-involvement, because that is the responsibility of a person learning to be godlike, the original gift of agency. When you individuate or prepare for your self-success, your spouse is on board because he loves you enough for you to find yourself. You understand the balance of autonomy and dependency to enjoyable interdependency. When tough happens, you let go and let God, as he is full of perfect love and knowing for you. You share and receive honest communication because of sharing equal love. You both ideally love emotionally maturely because you've given grievances and surrendered damaging history to God. Reset! We choose, cherish, and treasure each other. We securely attach to one another in a balanced love for one another. Intimacies are well practiced from verbal, intellectual, emotional, and psychological to spiritual, physical, and sexual. You give sexually to one another as a bonding activity that considers the desires of both man and wife, uniting your very souls together like a sacrament. You invest in one another with great interest. You assure each other and others that each is the greatest man or woman alive, at least for each other. You are both filled with virtuosity, fidelity, humor, fun, flexibility, cooperation, appreciation, and respect. And when this isn't the ideal, because you love one another like you love yourself, you give room and patience for when the other or yourself is not there yet. Remember this. We've, most of us, been given decades and more of life to reach idyllic perfection for each other. 10 Gems Assignment. Write on your crown the 10 things you value most in your king. Read this often. For something that is valuable to us gives back. The mighty forest king, having just delivered them their 10th gem, the diamond, then quoted from the good book itself. A wife's noble character is her husband's crown. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband. And husbands love their wives. So the boy and the girl exited the forest light, holding the gleaming crown between them, knowing the mighty forest king and his queen would always be with them, forest to forest, as they lived happily ever after.